The days are longer, the calendar is filling up, and I want to feel as good as this beautiful summer weather. That's why I've been loving Groons. It's one daily pack of gummies that covers my greens, vitamins, and minerals, and even has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber. So I don't need to juggle a complicated wellness routine on top of everything else. They taste amazing. They're easy to toss in my bag on the go. Plus, they're vegan, gluten free, and HSA, FSA eligible for reimbursement. Save up to 52% off with promo code podcast at gruns.co. That's code podcast at gruns.co.
Well, I think it's only right and safe that we don't let anyone like Michael Russo travel to Canada to infect an entire country. So I think Michael Russo is going to be hanging around the Twin Cities a lot in the next couple of months.
Yeah, I'm going to be like a normal human being, and suddenly I'm going to actually have to start paying for vacations because I'm going to be losing my status on Delta and Marriott at some point here. And I was just honestly figuring out, I don't even know when I'm going to get on a plane again. But I spent all night the other night, Jim, on the Canadian government's website trying to figure out the quarantine rules for American workers coming in there. And I think in Canada, a hockey writer should be an essential worker, don't you?
I would think in Canada, it would be the most essential worker.
I talked to Eric Stolhansky, Super Troopers 2 actor, the other day, and I don't know if anybody ever saw Super Troopers 2, but the plot of that is that they essentially I won't give the whole plot away because it's such a funny movie. Everybody should watch it. But basically, they moved the border of Canada. So I was talking to Eric about if we could figure that out in this type of scenario where I could just go in there and pretend that I'm in America and work. But essentially, the way the quarantine rules work in Canada right now, and the NHL made it extremely clear to me that there are no waivers for U.S. media. The way that the NHL got waivers, obviously, for the 50-team traveling parties and people with the league and things like that, that there's no waivers for us. So we have to do the quarantine protocol. And the quarantine is beyond strict. You could get fined $750,000 and spend time in jail if essentially you are caught, if a border agent comes to your hotel room or whatever, and you cannot leave the hotel room for 14 days. Like, you can't go get sun, you can't go to the gym, you can't go to the hotel lobby, you can't go to the lobby restaurant. All food is delivered and left outside your hotel room door. So thank goodness The Athletic has about a dozen hockey writers in Canada, so we'll be able to cover the hubs pretty well. But I think the rest of the beat writers from the U.S. are going to be sitting on our couches covering games, which is going to be extremely frustrating for some of us.
He's Michael Russo, of course, Michael Russo of The Athletic. I'm Jim Souhan from the Star Tribune. This is the Russo Hockey Show, part of the TalkNorth.com podcast network. Best way to listen to this show or the network, which now includes Meatgistics for grilling, Gopher Hole for Gopher Sports, all kinds of outdoors content, as well as our usual sports shows. Subscribe to your favorite podcast app. Best way to listen. You can also find all the feeds by following us at Twitter at TalkNorthPod. And thank you to our producer, Brandon Morton, and our sponsors. We have a new sponsor, Bosch Law Firm. We'll tell you more about him in a little bit and his business. And we also have, of course, Profile by Sanford, which has been working with Michael, and our longtime sponsor, Tony Hoaglander, State Farm agent working out of Champlin. So what is the latest, Michael, with just all the hub and travel plans?
Well, I'll first of all preface this that by the time that Brandon releases the podcast, there might be a lot of things that change. So today is sort of the day that we're hoping that they're going to wrap up the return to play protocols and the collective bargaining agreement. And the way it'll work is the executive board, which are the 31 player reps, and then anybody else really that wants to get on that call. Were presented with a bunch of information yesterday, but the final information has not been given to them yet. When it gets to them, then the way that I had Devin Dubnyk on the radio yesterday on the Fan, and he told me the way it'll work is that then the player reps will have internal, individual, team conference calls to try to explain all this minutia, all this information that they're going to get from return to play protocols to collective bargaining agreement to the fan base to the player membership on each team. And then they'll go back to the league with anything that maybe they don't like. And then finally there will be a vote, hopefully this weekend. And the hope is to get them on the ice by training camp July 10th, head up to Canada or the Eastern Conference going to Toronto, the Western Conference going to Edmonton around July 25th or 6th, and then return to play the qualifying rounds, the round robin, starting around August 1st with at least one exhibition game in there. And but this is going to be one all-encompassing vote, and that's something that's going to create a lot of tension, no doubt, with the players. But the reality is, without a return to play, there can be no collective bargaining agreement. A lot of the give and takes that the PA got from this was because they were returning to play. So by the NHL players returning to play this summer, that's going to be able to decrease their escrow from the normal damage that it would have taken next year. It's going to get them back on the Olympics. It's probably going to cost Kirill Kaprizov the ability to debut for the Wild this summer. So a lot of things are going to be in this collective bargaining agreement, but without one, there can't be the other. And that's going to create a lot of tension because a lot of players don't think that they should be forced to essentially return to play by accepting this collective bargaining agreement. And the other thing that players tell me that they're not happy with is they don't think that 140 players plus, 140 plus, really, if you think 7 teams times 23, should have the right to have a say in return to play.
All right. Hey, we do want to make a special point of welcoming the Bosch law firm, Gerald Bosch, new sponsor of the program, new sponsor of the network. And I know, Michael, you've been corresponding with Jerry.
Yeah, I mean, he's been writing me for months about wanting to sponsor, so it's really cool that he's signed up. And frankly, anybody else that wants to sponsor the podcast, they can email you, Jim. And but it's really, really cool that Jerry's done this, and it means an absolute ton. And hopefully, we can help him get some business.
Absolutely. So here, we'll let you hear from Jerry himself, and we'll be back in a second.
Hi, everyone. Attorney Jerry Bosch here with Bosch Law Firm and WorkCompExperts.com. For almost 30 years, we've represented Minnesotans just like you from border to border and all over the great state of Minnesota to ensure they're treated fairly and with respect when they've suffered a work-related injury. A work injury can change your life in an instant. Wage loss, medical bills, job insecurity, and the stress of trying to navigate a complicated work comp system on your own. You need someone in your corner who can help you focus on getting back on your feet and getting paid while you do. To make sure you're being paid all available work comp benefits for your injury, please call the attorneys at Bosch Law Firm anytime. The call is always free and there's never a fee unless we recover benefits on your behalf. Call 651-333-8300 or visit us at WorkCompExperts.com.
Michael, one of the interesting aspects of the collective bargaining negotiations has been the fact that we're talking about the Olympics again, huh?
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because, as I've said a gazillion times on this podcast, Jim, it feels like the new NHL calendar every year is going to start in January. I just don't know how you ever get it back on track. So, if the 2022 Olympics are in the wintertime, you could be stopping the league about a month in. So, I think there's been a lot of, scuttlebutt out there that maybe that hockey winds up at some point changing to the Summer Olympics. So we'll see about that. But this is one of those things that the players have wanted to do, and we'll see if it actually winds up happening.
Any other angles you want to tell us about? I guess the big question is, why 2 Canadian cities? I mean, I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you.
Well, it's COVID-19. I mean, it's that simple. Vegas and Vancouver were the front runners as of really a week and a half ago. As of Monday, Vegas, they were going to Vegas. They were 2 weeks into the planning process. It was an absolute guarantee that they were going there. And then on Monday, the Las Vegas Review and Journal reported about outbreaks with COVID-19, not only the rise in the city, but also with hotel employees, not necessarily MGM employees, but the Cosmo and things like that. And I think it freaked the NHL out because the NHL was basically building this bubble around the Park MGM hotel. They were going to wall it off, have guard gates. The players were going to have the run of the mill of all the restaurants in not only the Park MGM, but restaurants outside of that hotel, and also the plaza around New York, and so like the Cheesecake Factory, that gigantic bar there, that beer house that I forget what it's called, but basically the beer house that a lot of Wild fans have met up before games before. and T-Mobile Arena. That whole area was going to be the NHL's. And then all of a sudden, the league realized that, hey, and I've been saying this to them, I've been asking this question for honestly 2 months because I've sort of been the Athletics hub city writer. And like they were not having hotel employees be living in the bubble for 2 months. And I kept on asking the question, doesn't it defeat the purpose of a bubble if you're allowing the rest of the staff that are going to be around these players to go into society every day for 2.5 months?
Right.
And I was like, well, some people are going to be in the bubble, some aren't. That's what I was told. Well, then all of a sudden this outbreak happens. And I think the league just finally realized, you know what, the only sure way of trying to pull this off is to get the heck out of the United States of America. And so now they're going to go to Canada. And as long as the players, again, approve these protocols. And the reason why Vancouver is out, which also might want to concern some players, is that Vancouver has done an incredible job. I mean, you and I have been there. That is a massive city. And they've got a lot of tourists coming in from Asia all the time there. And yet, for some reason, British Columbia and Vancouver has done an incredible job at keeping COVID-19 at a minimum there. And so the Ministry of Health in British Columbia basically said to the league, we want to see all your COVID-19 protocols. The league presents it. And the way I understand it is that the ministry did not agree with what the NHL's protocols will be for positive tests. I think what the province wants to make sure that the NHL essentially doesn't blow COVID-19 up there is that if a player tests positive for COVID, they're out for 14 days. They do contact tracing. Anybody around that player, whether it's other teams, that team, other players, staff, they've got to be out of the locker room. And the league's like, whoa, no. We'll handle our own protocols. We're going to have negative tests over a certain amount of span. If that player is asymptomatic, they can get on the ice. If Michael Russo on the Minnesota Wild gets sick, it doesn't mean that Jim Souhan, his defense partner, has to come out of the lineup. So the league basically said, no, we're not doing that. And they pulled out of Vancouver. And Vancouver wasn't willing to budge. So now the Edmonton and Toronto are. And so they're going to have these hub cities in Toronto and Edmonton. The Toronto one's going to be at Exhibition Place, which is this 40-acre campus that has like BMO Field, the Coca-Cola Coliseum. They're going to have food trucks and chefs brought in. They have this new Hotel X, it's called there, but it's not big enough to have everybody. So I think what they're going to do is they're going to take, I believe it's going to be the Royal York downtown that has other amenities as well. They'll have a shuttle system between the two. So that'll be Toronto. In Edmonton, it'll be the JW Marriott and the Sutton Place and Rogers Place, which is the arena with an attached practice facility. They're literally going to build a wall around these 2.5 block radius. And they're going to try to build this sort of resort mentality for players because for what one of the big reasons I've said on the podcast the last several weeks is that the league is very worried and sympathizes with the fact that these players 2.5 months, not even 2.5 months, 2 weeks, a month into being stuck in this walled off situation are just going to go absolutely bonkers. And so they want to give them as much room. They're going to have movie theaters and all sorts of they've contracted golf courses that these players are going to be able to go to on their time off. And again, the way it's going to work is that if you are a restaurant or a golf course, which you would not be in the hub in that situation, if you're not in the bubble, those places the league is literally going to own and operate for 2.5 months. And they're going to just take over these operations. So, if I want to go golf, if I'm just a regular citizen that's used to golfing at that golf course, well, nope, you can't. It's only going to be used by the NHL for this much long. So this is going to be an absolutely unbelievably astronomically expensive proposition that the league is trying to do to try to get hockey back on the map this summer.
Wow. Hey, as Michael said, if you want to advertise with this show or the network, you can reach me at JSOUHAN at talknorth.com, jsouhan at talknorth.com. I do want to ask Michael how he's doing with Profile by Sanford right now.
Doing well. I'm about to hit the 30-pound mark. It's
wow.
I've gotten to this point a lot with weight loss over the time where it really just start to slow down and plateau, and that's when you really got to kind of actually put a little variety in your diet and but man, sticking to the diet. I'm doing as much exercise as I've done at all throughout this quarantine. And as everybody knows, it's been super hot outside, but it's been absolutely awesome. As I've mentioned a gazillion times, I love my coach, Danette. This program is developed by doctors. It really takes the guesswork out of weight loss. And as I've mentioned, I got into a lot of bad habits during the hockey season and quarantine. And what's been really, really satisfying for me is the amount of tweets and emails I've gotten from people that listen to our podcast that have actually signed up for Profile by Sanford. So I highly recommend it. Not only is there 6 locations in the Twin Cities, but there's other locations around the outskirts of Minnesota as well. So for more information, go to profileplan.com and tell them Russo sent you. Again, that's profileplan.com.
Good stuff. Let's get, or anything else you want to get to before I get to Twitter questions? We have some good
probably
Twitter
let's
questions.
just give our weekly Kaprizov update. And the deal now is it looks like the NHL, it just shows you how you really got to be careful with sources right now. A really reputable Montreal reporter tweeted out the other day that Kaprizov and players like Kaprizov were going to be eligible to return this summer. And I had been told all along, no, it wasn't heading that way. So I immediately, before retweeting it or anything like that, as Wild fans were going crazy, I immediately emailed the league, the union, and they said, no, that's absolutely wrong. So I knew where this was going the next day, right? The reason why you got to be careful is you got to talk to the principals that are actually in the meetings. And there are people close to Kaprizov that just think that this should be an open and shut case. So like when you text them and say, hey, is this story right? They're like, yeah. And then you find out it wasn't right. And then they're like, well, it should be right. Well, that's why you got to be careful with this, because even though the CBA says that he should have been eligible, that can change with one simple amendment of the CBA. And as I've mentioned a gazillion times, a return to play protocol is coming with an extended and amended CBA, which is going to include this rule. So, what we're being told now is, I reported the other day that Kaprizov is not eligible to play. Then a late night development. I think the league and the PA really saw a lot of the reaction here. And basically what they've now put in, as long as nothing's changed, I mean, this could change. Everything has changed a gazillion times in this process. But what they're saying now is that he can sign with the Wild this summer, burn the first year of his contract, but he's not allowed to play. And what that would do is that it would allow the Wild to get him under contract, but it would essentially, like, what's the purpose? Like, all it would do is cost him $5 million next summer when you re-sign him as a restricted free agent. Because what I want to convey to a lot of people is, like, when I wrote this update the other day, Wild fans were like, well, just sign him. It's not as simple as just re-signing Kaprizov. It's like, people don't understand that this is a $5 million decision from the Wild, and we don't even know if Kaprizov's going to want to do it. So what I mean by this is that if you burn the first year of the contract, the Wild next summer have to re-sign him as a restricted free agent. As I've written and said on this podcast a lot, he could become an unrestricted free agent in the year 2024. So that's 4 years from now. So next summer, or when Kaprizov is a restricted free agent, that Billy Guerin, to convince him to stay here and not become an unrestricted free agent, is going to have to essentially, for lack of a better term, overpay Kaprizov on a long-term deal to buy out some of those unrestricted years. Well, if all of a sudden if you're the Minnesota Wild, you'd rather do that in 2 years and get 2 full years of Kaprizov playing hockey under his cheaper entry-level deal, so you see what you have and you have more information to re-sign him. Now, if you burn the first year for no reason this year, you have him play next year, and let's just say he after not playing for 9 months has a tough transition to the NHL. Now, with a wing and a prayer, you're basically saying, this is what we project you to be. We're, pray to God we're right, that you're going to become this star, and we're going to give you a long-term deal at $5-6 million, and it's going to wind up being a potential huge calamity and a mistake if Kaprizov doesn't become the player that everybody projects him to be. And so if I was Billy Guerin, I wouldn't do it, frankly. If the league says you can sign him now, but he can't play, sorry. Then I say to Cap, you got 2 choices. Sign your 2-year deal in 2021 and let's get you over here, or you just go play in the KHL this year, have another good year, then we'll sign you for a 1-year deal in 2 years. So that's just me.
Wow. Okay, let's go ahead and get some Twitter questions. Do want to thank Tony Hoagland, your State Farm agent, works out of Champlin, handles my insurance, handles Michael Russo's insurance.
It's not just a home or a car. It's the 6 months you've saved for the Ultra HD flat screen, just in time for football season. And the overtime you worked for that third car so your team can drive himself to practice. While other insurance companies just see them as a bundle or a combo, State Farm agent Tony Hoagland sees your home and car as things you work really hard for. Tony understands what your things really mean to you and is here to help you give them the protection they deserve. Talk to State Farm agent Tony Hoagland in Champlin for your home and auto insurance today. That's ChamplinInsurance.com.
By the way, Jim.
Yeah.
My mother has been complaining lately that she tweets you and you never like her comments.
I will look for her. I have not
probably
noticed.
you probably have to unmute her. Yeah, my mom's like a teenage girl. She pawns for likes on Twitter and Facebook. So
don't get me in trouble with your mother. I like your mother, and I thought I'm pretty sure I follow her. My problem is I follow so many people I can miss a lot.
Yeah, no good point. Or you accidentally muted or blocked her. No big deal.
Yeah. Well, let me put this. There are a lot of people these days I have not accidentally muted or blocked. Your mother would be an accident if I muted or blocked her. From Zepper on Twitter, do we know who the first overall pick is going to be?
I think that everybody thinks it's going to be Lafreniere. The other guy. But the thing is that I want Wild fans to know, say the Wild would get the number 1 overall pick, which we could talk about too. We haven't talked about that yet, Jim. Lafreniere, he's looks like a generational player, but he is a left wing. So just if you're a Wild fan and you're already holy crap, we already have all these lefties, left wing, literally left wing, left shot wingers. Byfield is the center. And so, that's what Wild fans are going to have to understand. If they get it and they take the left wing, that's, just know that they're leaving a center on the board.
Right. Hey, Michael, one production note. I think you might be rubbing up against your microphone. Keep an eye on that. From Derek Felska, longtime listener. Very important question here. Has Russo always worn multiple gold chains?
Yeah, one was my grandfather's. The other was my stepfather's.
Cool. All right. And he also asked which pro athlete that we've interviewed has sported the most jewelry. I did interview Deion Sanders once. That probably took the cake.
Yeah, I don't really pay attention.
All righty.
Probably Pavel Bure maybe when I was in Florida. I think Matt Dumba wears a lot of jewelry. I don't know. The only thing I noticed about Dumba and Zucker in particular are their suits. They're sharply dressed guys, but I never really pay attention to jewelry other than, sometimes I'll see the watch or something like that, but I haven't paid attention to who wears the most jewelry.
From our friend Bill, at what point will the Wild need a definitive answer on the Winter Classic?
It's a good question. I don't see how there's any human way they play the Winter Classic. I think it'll be postponed a year. They just, right now the league's got a gazillion things on their plate than to just cancel that. But look, if you're the Minnesota Wild, how can you even sell tickets for this game right now? And if you're the NHL, you don't even know what amount of tickets you could distribute because we don't know what social distancing rules are going to be like in January 1st. We don't know what the police situation in downtown Minneapolis will be on January 1st. We don't know if the NHL is going to be able to return by January 1st. So I think it's pretty obvious what's going to wind up being the decision there. By the way, on the first overall pick, so I don't know if anybody realized, paid attention to all that, but basically the way it works now is the Detroit Red Wings, who had just a historically horrific season. They just kept on trotting Jimmy Howard out just to lose game after game after game to try to get the number 1 overall pick. They appropriately fell to 4, and team placeholder is now going to get the first overall pick. So that means of the 8 teams that play in the qualifying round, if they lose, no matter who it is, doesn't matter how good of a season you had, you now have a 12.5% chance or a 1 in 8 chance to get the first overall pick. So if the Wild lost to Vancouver, they would have a chance to get the first overall pick. And also, if by any chance the qualifying rounds don't occur, if by, in other words, that COVID-19, this thing it cannot get done, or the players vote this down, then it would be the 8 teams that officially didn't make the playoffs before this whole qualifying round started that would have the first overall pick. opportunity, and the Minnesota Wild would again still be in that. So the Wild have a chance for the first overall pick if they lose to Vancouver or return to play completely gets crumbled to pieces here. So that's why about 7,000 people, 62% of them in my poll, said that they want me in goal.
Well, knowing Minnesota sports history, there's no way. We know what's going to happen. The Wild are going to get the first round pick, and the first pick in the draft is going to be a superstar. That's just the way the Wild operate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know what's going to happen. Either the Wild are going to win in the first round, win in the qualifying round, cost themselves a chance for the first overall pick, and then get trucked in the first round, or they'll lose to Vancouver in the qualifying round, go in with like teams like Chicago and Pittsburgh, and one of those teams will get it. So
absolutely. From K Buyer 88, will the potential salary cap rollback make it cheaper for teams to buy out contracts? Good question.
I mean, in my head, I don't see how it would. First of all, the salary cap is going to be flat. And second of all, it's not going to change the price of contracts. So if you're going to buy out a player, it's going to be the same price. Unless they've changed the buyout rules where it's no longer, 2/3 or 1/3, depending on the scenario of the player. I don't see how it would be cheaper to buy out players. I cannot imagine that the league. Why would the PA give that up in a collective bargaining agreement?
Right. From Aaron Williams, what are your thoughts on people saying the Wild should lose in the first round?
I mean, I get it. I know the players are in it to win it. I think. I mean, I could tell you that the Minnesota Wild are one of those teams that I'm sure have a number of players that are just not too fond of this whole return to play scenario and would love to just not play. But so I don't know if that's going to, change their attitude in a qualifying round against Vancouver, and they will wind up losing. But I get why Wild fans feel this way. They're potential blue chippers at the top of this draft. As I mentioned, Quinton Byfield and Lafreniere. And this is an organization that hasn't had the ability to draft a blue chipper at the top of the draft in their entire history since the days of Gaborik. So, and obviously they messed up the Benoit Pouliot pick, but really they've never had that opportunity since the inaugural season. So I get why Wild fans want that. They look at this as having the ability of you get Kaprizov in here. You have guys like Beckman, you have Havanoff, you have Fiala, and now all of a sudden you get a top pick. If you're a Wild fan that says, hey, I'm looking at the Minnesota Wild and I don't think they have a legit chance to win the Stanley Cup, and there's a much greater chance of getting the number one overall pick than winning a Stanley Cup, then I see why they're saying that. I get also the other side where some people have criticized Wild fans for feeling this way. But, covering this team for 15 seasons the way that I have, I completely understand why 62% of the people in my poll seem to think that the Wild or wouldn't mind the Wild just not playing past the qualifying round.
15 years you've been here. I've been here almost 30 and a half years.
Yeah.
Man,
You want to hear something crazy? So last night, what are the chances? At 11, I'm going to just go to my text. Hang on for a second. At 11:31 p.m., I got a text from somebody in the NHL. And at 11:44 p.m., I got a text from this other person in the NHL. And probably I'm going to give enough information that fans could figure out who it was. But so 13 minutes apart, it happened 11:31, 11:44. And I'm looking at the two names, and it dawns on me that in 1998, when I covered the Florida Panthers, these two players were traded for each other. One for one, traded for each other, these two people. And it just coincidentally, 13 minutes apart at 11:31 and 11:44, 22 years later in the year 2020, the two of them are texting me. I mean, that just shows you how absolutely old I am. I mean, it's crazy. Or how long I've been doing this, covering the National Hockey League. So
the problem is I can't make age jokes or experience jokes about you because I'm older and I've been in the business even longer than you. And that's really
no, I know. But this is a lot of years covering the NHL.
It is. It's a long time to be covering the Minnesota Wild. I'll say that. From Chris, asked a question that's been repeated in a few different ways by a few different people the last couple of days. I'll just ask it to give you an open forum to answer it. The old Dodgers mantra of wait till next year has kept a lot of us going with regards to Kaprizov. With his debut in doubt, again, What do Wild fans have to get excited about for next season as far as this team improving?
Well, I mean, seeing if Fiala could continue where he left off, but that would probably. I mean, next year's team. Although I had Bill Guerin on the radio yesterday, and Johnny Connor, who's a longtime listener of the show and is the baseball play-by-play guy at the University of Minnesota. I've known him a long, long time. He asked a question that immediately I knew that probably Johnny meant Jack Eichel, but he goes, how much do you want to get a big right-handed center to put between Fiala and Kaprizov in the future? And the one thing that Bill Guerin did was, one, not poo-poo the question. He said that he wants to. But the other thing is that he said we have a lot of things that we want to address in the offseason. So, I am, as I've said a lot on this podcast, we don't know when the offseason is going to be, Jim, and we don't know how long it's going to be, how truncated, how hard it's going to be in a very unusual circumstance to make changes. But I think it's very clear that we don't know what this team is going to look like next year from a goaltending perspective, getting a center and things like that. Like every GM that's been on the Minnesota Wild, Paul Fenton, the same way, they've looked at three things that they want to do for this team: get a top goalie, get centers, and get a game breaker. And Fenton might have gotten it done with the game breaker. Everybody has been struggling trying to find a center. And now that Devin Dubnyk's starting sort of the decline here, they're going to have to eventually figure out who the future goalie is, whether that's Kakkonen or somebody else. So to answer Chris's question in, again, a convoluted, long-winded, rambling way, while I might say to you, and it might not excite you, well, you have Fiala to look forward to, the reality is we don't know what next year's roster is going to look like. And maybe Kaprizov will be on it. Maybe he will just sign his 2-year deal and say, the heck with it, I'll wait, or just assign me somewhere and I'll come back. So maybe Kaprizov will still be on next year's team. And again, I mean, the one thing I want to make clear, one thing I want to make clear to Wild fans that are, it sounds like that fan is getting frustrated, is that I really do genuinely believe that for the first time in a long time, and a lot of reasons being the Kaprizov pick, but then also the last couple of years drafts by the Wild, is they do have a lot of prospects coming. I mean, Hovinoff looks like a player. Boldy looks like a player. Adam Beckman looks like an absolute steal. So there are kids coming. They're just not going to be here immediately. So the old Dodgers mantra of wait till next year might be what you have to do.
Let's get a final thought from Michael Russo. Thanks to our producer, Brandon Morton. We do appreciate everyone who listens to this show and the network. These are tough times for all businesses. We are trying to expand and add shows and do some innovative things as we go along, and we need listeners to make it all work. So thank you sincerely. Michael, your final thought.
I have two final thoughts. One, a public service announcement. If people out there are computer tech savvy, maybe Brandon is. So I have a HP regular, PC, not an Apple, and I get these stupid like notifications that fly on my screen all the time that I just can on Google Chrome that I cannot get rid of. So tell me how to clear these notifications because it's driving me nuts. It's like I click something in Vegas and now it's like any Vegas news just pops on my screen while I'm writing. That's one final thought. The other final thought is another public service request is obviously for the next 2 months, if the Wild are alive, I'm probably not going to be able to go to Canada. So I want to come up with unique story ideas to do from home that aren't just watching games on TV and writing a game story from here with a Zoom call. So if you've got any neat story ideas that will help me write game stories that aren't just me watching TV, feel free to throw them my way because I'm going to be looking to it. Because I just the thought, Jim, and you could relate to this, of sitting on my couch watching a game, then going on my laptop and writing about it is just so nauseating to me to even think about. The point of doing this job well, is to be in an arena and to get to talk to players. And frankly, I'm a little worried about our future as sports writers because I don't know when the heck we're going to get close to an athlete again. And the way to do this job successfully is to, develop relationships, talk to players face to face, and not write the same thing because we have the same access as every other media person in town. So I'm a little worried.
Yeah, I do have a story column idea for you, and maybe it's better as a podcast idea. I think what we need to do is we need to set up some plexiglass surrounding your workstation in your home, and invite fans over to scream and pound the glass while you write, just so you get the player experience.
Yeah, exactly. And or just also, it's like, I mean, as writers, we write when the crowd's chanting, and so that's the other thing. It's gonna be just bizarre. The whole thing, oh man, makes me anxious.
Yes, and we were already anxious before this started, so it's compounding it. Hey, hang in there, Michael. Hang in there, Wild fans. We're going to keep giving you a good podcast to listen to. We do appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
Pretty little city built on a hillside. Music in the bars and fire in the sky. We went to the beach and it was covered in ice. And I used to call it home. So much coming out, there's nothing going in. I know that you feel like you're never gonna win. Oh, but the world won't forgive a winner.
Yeah, I'm going to be like a normal human being, and suddenly I'm going to actually have to start paying for vacations.